turn my video on. Hello. You can go to the next slide if you don't mind. So my name is Sarah Wallace. This is going to be an abridged presentation for my thesis, which I did last year. I graduated from University of Maryland with a master's in landscape architecture in August. So this is my design for NatureRx on the University of Maryland campus. Sorry, I haven't done a presentation in a while. Could you go to the next slide, please? So I used Amos Clifford's book, Your Guide to Forest Bathing, as a basis and kind of like a guide to design my spaces on campus. If you haven't read it, it's really good. It explains really well on how to forest bathe. Next slide, please. At University of Maryland, there is some programming for NatureRx. Dr. Roberts started it a few years ago in 2018. Next slide, please. So this is a map of University of Maryland's campus. UMD partnered with ParkRx America to find sites on campus and are deemed NatureRx spaces. So I went to all of them, checked them out, and created a classification for each one, loosely based on like the amount of trees versus like how many, how much sidewalk and concrete you're surrounded by and like noise. So we can tell there's a lot more urban than there are natural spaces. And I just want to draw your attention to that purple kind of shape up at the top. That is the site that I use for my design. Next slide, please. So campuses are just riddled with lots of students with anxieties and stresses. I want to take those issues and overlap them with a design solution, like sitting areas and trail systems. So hopefully the outcome would be less stress, more relaxation, and more exercise and movement from students. Next slide, please. So this is a zoomed in to the site that I chose. It's just highlighting the dorms surrounding it, different points of entry. There are two NatureRx sites fairly close to it. Next slide, please. Just another slide showing the circulation around the site. You can see at the left, there's a highway, so that creates a lot of noise. There's traffic kind of circulating around and some foot traffic from students getting over to the garage, to dorms, and to the main campus. Next slide, please. So here's the site. I'm not going to talk about each one. The Nature Hangout, Mindful Meditation, and Sensory Pergola. These are the spaces that I chose to create a design. I also designed a trail system throughout. It's a little light, you can kind of see it over where it says NatureRx. So everything's connected to get to each space and goes within this wooded area. Next slide, please. Ooh. It's okay. These are some of the design elements that I wanted to incorporate, going back to Amos Clifford's book, having signage and like an entryway, so students are drawn in and there's a threshold for you to actually cross over to get to the invitations. I think that would be imperative to have like a map, the signage at the left. I did a sketch of having a map and maybe on the right side saying like who, what, why, where of NatureRx or forest bathing. The center panels, I designed them as if they could maybe have a question about like to a student, potential student, are you feeling anxious? You could flip it over and go, and it would have the answer of going and doing a certain invitation and where you would be able to do that. Next slide, please. More design elements. Seating, I think you need to be comfortable. So stay a little bit longer in nature, and having some type of like kind of artistic element to intrigue students into the spaces would be helpful. Next slide. This is the Nature Hangout right behind one of the large dormitories on campus. So this is about, I don't know, maybe like 50 feet off of the patio behind this dormitory. So there's an entryway, the kind of gray circle below those triangles, and those triangles would be stationary hammocks, and then moving along the trail, there would be posts for students to bring their own hammocks, and then you can just continue on the trail to another space. Oh, next slide. So this is a section elevation cutting through the entry patio, through the stationary hammocks, a seat wall. If you don't want a hammock, if you don't have a hammock, you could just sit on the wall, and showing the posts where you could hang your own hammock. Next slide, please. This is a sketch I did looking back towards the building of what it maybe potentially could look like. Next slide. This is the sensory pergola site plan over at the other western end of the site. Same kind of thing, entryway, threshold to the site, meandering trails down to the spaces to forest bathe, to sit and relax and reflect. Next slide, please. This is a section elevation through all of those spaces from the Wellness Way, the one road going through the forested area and the stream, over to the pergola and archway, which then leads to more trailways and into other spaces. And I believe that might be my last slide. Oh, no, just a perspective drawing of just what the entry would look like with signage and seating. Next slide. And another perspective drawing of pergola and looking over the archways. Well, I think I kept it pretty short. Oops. And I just put a link up there if you want to read my thesis. It's a lot longer. It's online at the University of Maryland thesis database, I guess you'd call it.
Thank you, Sarah. Do you, maybe you could put the link in the chat?
Oh yeah, sure.
To read it. Wonderful work that you've done. Thank you. We have a minute for any questions for Sarah. Stacy says she wants to read it, so that's good. It's wonderful when someone else outside your committee, right, reads your.
Yeah, that wants to.
Sarah, I have a question. This is Don Rakow. How supportive is the administration of implementing this project, either in terms of their pronouncements or, more importantly, funding?
That is a great question. I feel like that came up during my dissertation. I think from what I know from last year, there are other programs going on that I didn't even get into that are written out in my thesis, like Naomi, help me out.
The agroecology corridor.
Yeah, thank you, the ecology corridor, potential like foraging and different walks throughout the campus. University of Maryland campus is an arboretum. All of the trees are labeled. There's, you can find it on their website and find each tree. I think eventually, if there was enough backing, it could actually be developed and designed out to fruition, but I'm not sure at this moment it could happen.
Yeah, just to add to that, this is Naomi Sachs. I was Sarah's thesis advisor, and there is a group that's working on the agroecology corridor, as well as campus wellness way or something like that. Maybe Dr. Roberts can chime in. That I haven't heard anything about in about 6 months, but I think people are slowly going towards the agroecology corridor. It's a lot of different people working on it. One thing that the dean and others were very intrigued about Sarah's work was the possibility of doing things in phases. So, maybe everything didn't have to happen at once, but the trail could start, or one of the, the hammocking area. And then as funding came along, other elements could be added. So Sarah, your site, part of the reason that you chose it is it really is in such a nature-rich, wild nature-rich place, which most of UMD doesn't have.
Yeah, it's pretty much surrounded by highways and heavy trafficked routes. So
yeah. Oh, Injalin says, I live in the area and I think there's potential for community engagement. Wow, that's cool.
it would be nice.
We should connect. That would be great.
And I wonder, Naomi and Sarah, are there any local guides who are actually guiding on that trail and using it kind of as a model for a self-guided and in-person kind of dual model?
Well, as far as I know, there isn't really a trail where like I was showing a trail that would have to be like cut back and leveled out and everything. But to answer, I guess, your first question, there are local guides in the area. I did go on I went on 2 different forest bathing excursions, one at the Arboretum, which was at night at the full moon. And then I did one like up near where I live, which is like an hour away north in Ellicott City. So there are ANFT guides around.